And welcome to another edition of Turning Pages, where we're about more things than books. I'm your co-host, Paul Brogan, and with my co-host, Margaret Porter, we're delighted to bring you a very special edition of the program today. Margaret?
Thank you, Paul. In keeping with the season, our topic today is giving and receiving, and we're going to talk about gifts for writers and readers. And we have two guests with us today who are well qualified to speak to that. I'm delighted to welcome Virginia Macgregor to the set. She is a friend and a neighbor and has been a resident of Concord for 8 years. She's a multi-published author of 7 books for young adults and for adults. And we're delighted to have her with us today. She's been with us before on your show also, so she's quite a veteran of the studio.
Thank you for having me back.
Also with us today is Kathleen Bailey, who has deep roots in the community, having gone to school in Concord and grown up in Concord. And she's the author of nearly a dozen books of various genre, including some very well-received and beloved books about parts of New Hampshire, both Exeter in particular, and a book that came out about a year ago called Growing Up in Concord, New Hampshire, which was one of several she co-authored with her late daughter, Sheila. And they're a wonderful series of books, and I know people are still talking about them, and you have another one on the way in the spring. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're going to start out by talking about being writers at this time of year when people say, what would you like for a present, or what kind of gifts would be on your wish list? What kind of gifts you like to receive as a writer? What's useful or inspiring or distracting in a good way as a writer? Kathleen, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I'll let Virginia go first, because what I'm going to say is probably not what you expect.
I don't know what you were going to say.
Right, I've gone more traditional, so I'll do the traditional and you can do the non-traditional response. So I was thinking writers are mostly obsessed with stationery. I certainly am. So any kind of beautiful stationery. Writers are also quite particular, so it's worth doing your research. So I love notebooks. They're the starting point for all my work. And there's this German brand called Leuchtturm that's really, really wonderful. The texture of the paper's gorgeous. There's a contents page. There are page numbers. And so that's a lovely form of notebook that you can give writers. There's also something I wanted to plug by the same company that's called a 5-year diary. And I use this as a sort of kind of jotting down things that happened during my year, but also I'll jot down writing ideas. And what's lovely is that on each page you can kind of look back through the last 5 years and you can sort of see your evolution of ideas as well as what's happened in your life. So notebooks all the way. And then something I was thinking about when I was told about this question, writers are always learning and growing and trying to understand more about their craft. And I was thinking about Masterclass, which is this online platform now where some wonderful authors that write in lots of different genres and for different audiences have done little sort of mini masterclasses sharing their wisdom and their experience. And so I think that would be a wonderful gift as well. So notebooks and perhaps some opportunities to learn more about your craft, like Masterclass online.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Writers' conferences are now planning what's coming up. I know the 603 conference, the New Hampshire Writers Project is in June. So asking writers, is there a conference you would like to go to, and maybe supporting them with a sum of money that can go towards a conference registration fee, or
That'd be
a
brilliant.
hotel room, or airfare if it's out of state, out of town, to be able to assist in the expenses, because conferences and workshops and things can be quite costly. Are you ready, Kathleen, to give your answer?
I'm really excited to hear what the...
Yeah, I've been at this a while, and I was 69 before I was published, so it's been a long haul. And over the years, I found that for me at least, it's not about stuff. Would I like a new laptop? Yes. Would I like a new desktop? Yes. Would I like some writing craft books? Probably. But what I really lust after is time and space to do it. And I don't want to go all Shirley MacLaine on you, but when I started my career, or when I started writing, I could bang out an article on a manual typewriter while my brother-in-law was watching the A-Team in the next room. I could write scenes in notebooks while I was waiting to pick up my kids. I could write at the laundromat. I was younger. It didn't matter if I was doing things in snatches because it all came together. But now that I'm older, the projects I'm interested in are more complex. And I really long for the chance to execute them. My husband is very good about when I say, sweetie, I have to write. But you can't really control your dentist or your PET scan or people who want to make appointments for you. So what I would ask for is big chunks of writing time to execute these projects in.
I think we all probably
Yes.
feel that way. What's your answer to the question, Paul?
It would be very similar to that because, or the ability to say no to some of the dozens of things that I get asked about, and suddenly the mystery is a mystery that's not being told. And yes, and I want to get to it, but then I have classes I'm teaching and all sorts of other things, and I can't say no. It's the Catholic guilt, I think. That,
Oh, it so is.
yes, but I need to learn in 2025 that I need to put aside even 15 hours a week uninterrupted to focus on writing the park. And I think, you know, in 7 or 8 months of that kind of scheduling, I could probably get it to a point where it's ready to really be looked at. Yes, exactly, by you. Since I've told you, you're the one I first want to read this.
I'll be nudging you and making sure you get that,
please do.
that time.
Now,
I'd
I'm
love
going to
the
return the
rapport
question
between them.
and ask you, what would you really like, or what do you wish you could have as a gift?
Well, I think, like Virginia, things that you write in or with or whatever, I think a lot of writers are extremely addicted to office supplies, not just notebooks, but all different sorts of pens and writing instruments, and always, you know, computer paper, printer paper, because I like to do hard copy drafts as I'm at various stages of writing. So a gift card to an office supply store or something like that. I mean, it's not very exciting or sexy or fun, but that's, you know, it's the usefulness of it, the utility of it, I think, is something that's important.
Pilot G2 pens in black and bold and yellow legal pads.
That's not my style, but it's other people's style that I know.
The particularity as well that I was saying about notebooks. I think what's really lovely if someone gives you a gift and they show that they have observed or that they know you a little bit.
Well, you have given me notebooks with my name written, with my name
Your
on the
birth
cover.
flower.
Yes, my birth flower for birthdays. You're very good at giving writer books and
you.
notebooks. It's a very thoughtful gift and one that is infinitely useful. So, are there anything sparked besides the things that we've talked about? You mentioned somebody mentioned craft books, and that's also, there are so many, and people are really particular about who they take advice from, and which craft books are the best.
Yeah, I want Stephen King on writing.
On writing is
but
classic.
I don't want Stephen King's other writing book.
On writing is really a good, that one is
but you have to be specific. You can't just say, sweetie, run down to the bookstore and get me a Stephen King book about writing, because his second one was not that good.
I don't remember if I've read that one. Or he might get you Misery, which is also about writing and not in a good way.
And maybe as an extension of like time away, because I was going to say, you know, we're all at different stages in our lives, and I'm at the small children stage, and so time away from the children is very precious. And I think there are these wonderful opportunities, whether it be like booking a small Airbnb somewhere for a few days, or they're writing retreats or something like that, investing in like a specific time and place to get away as well. I think can be really wonderful.
Give yourself time and don't fit it around the edges of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
Yeah.
Well, that gets back to the time and focus aspect of it that's so valuable to writers, and being able to sort of clear the decks and really focus. Sometimes though, when you do that, it's not a time when your brain is ready to cooperate. I've had this happen. It's sort of like, oh, I don't have any meetings today. I don't have to leave the house. I don't have to go anywhere. I've got this whole day to write, and then maybe it's just not clicking that day, and so I have to come up with something writing adjacent, like some research or something connected that's not specifically.
Now, Margaret, you take a writer's break periodically, right?
I'm on one now.
And are you able to step away completely? No, you still jot down things.
Yes, I do jot down things. But that fallow period is often when ideas for future works will come somewhat inconveniently, because I'm already scheduled to write something else. But and then it frees the mind and opens the mind, so that because writing is really a 24-hour job, as we all know, things will come just zipping into my head about the next book that I'm going to write, and I can jot it down and set it aside, and I know it will be useful later because nothing is wasted. But I don't say, oh, that's a great idea for chapter 7, and I don't sit down and write it. I'm really on a 6-week break, which is good. Also, there's a book coming out in the spring, and so from time to time, galley pages or something. So that part of it, the just checking for errors and typos and stuff like that. So I'm back on the clock when to keep the book production on schedule.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's a good question.
It might sound a bit self-serving, but I just had another thought, which is a very, very obvious one, which is people buying your book to gift to other people is one of the loveliest things. And I remember I have a dear friend once who showed up at my doorstep a few weeks before Christmas with 20 copies of my latest book that she'd ordered from the local bookstore, and said, I've decided to gift these to all my friends this Christmas.
Yes.
And then we sat there with Post-it notes, and I was able to personalise them and make them out. And I felt that was the biggest gift to me, because it was such a sense of, wanting to gift my story to other people.
It was validation.
It was validation, and it was such a lovely idea, and it was, it was a kind of reciprocal thing. So I think, we're always delighted when you buy our books and you gift our books as presents, and so that's always something wonderful too.
That happened to me this morning, and I was in a meeting, and a friend of mine whom I hadn't seen for some months was asking about the next book, which is a little bit connected to the one that came out last spring. And she said, oh, I heard a rumor that there's going to be a book connected to a change of location. And I said, yes, it is. And she said, oh, I've given a change of location to about 6 people recently. And it was just so gratifying to think that someone enjoyed a book enough to know that other people would appreciate it. And that was really fun. So yeah, that does mean a great deal.
I think one thing that we all want for Christmas is readers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yes, definitely. But, you've written nonfiction, and I think, as you have, and I think that it's maybe, I don't know, this could be a discussion, easier to give people nonfiction books if you know the kind of basic subjects they're interested in, like the history of Concord or the history of Exeter, or growing up in Concord. In your book. Then fiction is just so intensely personal that I hesitate always before giving someone a novel, whether it's my book or I don't give my books as gifts, but to give someone, I really love this book. I don't know how I would give a novel to. I'm not sure. I do recommend books. I review novels, and so sometimes I could do that sort of matchmaking. But I'm more hesitant when it comes to fiction. Is that just me?
I think you have to really know the person.
Yes.
Quite intimately.
And their taste.
Because it puts them on the spot in a way, because if you give them a book that you really loved and you give it to them thinking, they're going to love it, but if they don't love it, then they're not going to tell you probably. Or if
Exactly.
they don't love it, it would be nice to know why, and that would also spark an interesting conversation as well.
Giving a book is a very intimate thing.
I think it's
It's not like
Mm-hmm.
running down to Kohl's and getting a scarf or a tie.
Right.
And it's not generic.
Mm-hmm.
You really can't run out and get someone the latest bestseller or the latest James Patterson or whatever just because it's a book.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You have to target your audience, especially if it's fiction.
Yeah. That's what I mean, especially
Yeah,
if it's
totally.
fiction.
But there are these wonderful moments, aren't there? I don't know if you've experienced it too, when you're reading a book and it immediately makes you think of someone. And it might be the subject matter, or it might be just the style, and you just straight away think, I was actually reading Miranda July's All Fours at the moment. I immediately thought of a friend when I was reading it this morning, thinking this is going to be perfect for you. Now she might have read it already or have it. That's a different problem as well.
But it means you're right. If she has read it, then it means that you were
you're
correct
right.
in
I
that
know,
assumption.
but there are sometimes it's really I think it comes to you sometimes spontaneously.
Yes.
But it's an interesting subject about getting the right book for the right person. And
Can you think of what is the best present? It could be Christmas or otherwise that you've received that really helped or nurtured you as a writer or your writing.
Not me.
No.
I looked at the question, I agonized over it. I got nothing.
so the answer for me was the answer to the first question, which was when my husband says things like, "I'm going to take the children off for the day," and I love my children very much. But you go and write, so that's the best gift. And then I suppose one really lovely gift also from my husband, which is kind of connected to my writing life, but one of the books that I loved most when I was 17, I think, that really shook my writing reading world a bit, was The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. And my husband kind of sourced, first edition and uncorrected proof, and then I think the screenplay version as well of the film, and just like stacked them all up, and I think that
lovely.
that kind of effort as well is really lovely, and that sits on my shelf and inspires me as a writer as well. So those sorts of things can be really, if you know that there's a book that really means a lot to someone, or a story, and then you can kind of find different editions.
For me, it was my first personal computer was a wedding present because my husband's brother worked for a computer company. And so for our wedding present, he gave us a desktop system. And it was just life-altering. And I had been, longhand writing my novels up to this point. I was much younger and had used typing and had paid someone to word process my master's thesis and all this, but I now had the power to literally sit and from the brain write to a keyboard, and making the corrections was so simple and easy, and that was a couple of years later my first novel was published. I mean, that was like just the quintessential giving you something that sends you off. That was major.
For me, it was getting my first library card when I was 6.
Wow.
Oh,
And being able to go to the Concord Public Library with my card and go up to the children's section and find all the books I wanted. And it just seemed to open portals to me, to a little 6-year-old, that I felt so wonderful going in there. And I made a list at home, printed, of the books I had taken out, so I could follow through and keep getting new ones each time I went in. But in the first year, I took out 50 books with my library card, and I was so pleased, and I felt so...
That's also a distinctly American thing. That's one of the first places I went was the Concord Library when I moved 8 years ago with my small children, to kind of find my bearings and feel like home. And I was told, you can take out either 100 books or as many books as you like. And in England, there's a very clear limit. So I was just like a kid in a candy store, and the kids just stacked them up, and it feels so indulgent, and not like in a store where you have to go around and say no. And that's
And it was
wonderful.
just the same way all those years ago as it really is now, except that you had to be quiet.
Yes.
There was hardly any noise in there. But as far as upstairs in the children's room, there was a little latitude about that.
Yeah.
But it was so wonderful because I rushed over and I just started taking books because I wanted to use my card.
Choose your adventure.
Absolutely.
And the independent choice. It wasn't up to what someone chose for you or what you
I wasn't,
were told
or
to
I wasn't
read, or-
obligated
yeah.
by a school assignment
write
or
in a
something
report
like
or
that.
something.
It
Yeah.
was just,
Exactly.
it's yours.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, that takes us to the topic of reading. So as readers, which writers we all are, what kind of gifts do you like to receive as a reader? Do you have specific wish lists of books that you think, oh, if someone asks me what I want for Christmas, I will tell them that this is something that I want.
I'm very difficult to buy for with books because I read so much and I buy so many books. It's the only thing I allow myself to buy a lot of because I think I'm supporting my industry and I'm supporting the world of writing, and I allow myself to buy proper hard copy books from independent booksellers because I think that's the best way we can contribute to our own industry and our own craft. And so it's difficult because I'm reading all the time. So I guess it sounds a bit boring, but I guess gift cards to your local indie, especially your local indie rather than Amazon or something, really makes a difference. And I can't tell you, it's just a little bit of plastic and you think it's not exciting, but when someone gives me a gift card to my local independent bookstore, it's just the most wonderful thing. It's
Well,
a bit
this
like you
is-
in the library, right? You get to choose. And
It's our opportunity to plug
Yeah.
Gibson's because
Yes.
Gibson's do have gift cards, and
Yeah.
I have definitely given those at Christmas time to people.
They're wonderful.
Yeah.
I think you
New-
gave
New
me one
Ham-
for my birthday. Yeah.
Sorry. New Hampshire Retailer of the Year.
Yes,
Yes.
much deserved. Very
Very
exciting.
much deserved.
I've been a
Yes.
Gibson's girl since I was 6 years old.
Well, you remember all the other locations.
Yes.
Yes.
I've known them in 2 locations since.
It was
living
down
in
by
Concord.
Weeks in that shopping center for
Before
many
that,
years.
it was on North Main Street next to the Black Lantern gift shop.
Ah, okay, yes, yes.
And we went there every Friday night, and my parents would let me choose a paperback.
Oh,
Oh, how wonderful.
nice. Oh, nice.
And actually, if you're trying to find a book, do that dangerous thing of finding an intimate book for a friend for Christmas. What I love about Gibson's and good independent bookstores is that the booksellers have such varied tastes. I might have a friend who reads lots of horror, which I don't. And so I'll go to Ryan and I'll be like, just tell me the best, latest, horror book. And so cherishing those independent bookstores where there's such great literary knowledge there, where there's someone like Elizabeth who loves romance and really knows that genre, and Ryan with the horror, and then others who are brilliant in children's books and will be able to remain. I remember going in and saying my little girl's really into basketball now, and they're able to give me a graphic novel, and so I think tapping into that knowledge is good for gifts too.
Do you have any family traditions of certain books at Christmas time? When I was growing up, my dad was a huge fan of A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. He had a recording of it that we would listen to. He would read it, and then of course A Christmas Carol is one. So that there were certain stories, and year after year, it was an important part of our family tradition to read once we could read them ourselves and find our own. Did you have any Christmassy?
Nothing in particular.
Nothing in particular.
So we started a tradition here when I moved here in the first year. I had a little 2-year-old. I was pregnant with my second child, and at the daycare, one of the days before Christmas, they were all allowed to come in their pajamas, and they sat there, and as a whole daycare, they read the Polar Express. And I didn't know much about the Polar Express. I hadn't read it. I didn't realize it was such an iconically American children's Christmas story. And it was lovely. They were all given little bells to go with the story that they brought home. And so now we always read the Polar Express before Christmas.
Story.
And actually for children, it's almost easier. We pull off all the Christmas books from their shelves in the lead up to Christmas. And they also want to read them in the middle of summer, which is quite fun. But, we pull them all out. And so, those lovely ones. And then there's a new series, a sort of Dasher series about the reindeer by Matt Tavares, who's a local author, which is absolutely gorgeous picture book, kind of looking at the role of the reindeer in the bringing of presents. So there are just so many great children's stories, aren't there, connected to Christmas.
Do you make time to read during the holidays? If you get gift books? If I got a book on Christmas Day, I was gone for the rest of the day. It's like
I wish my children.
I'd have the book read, before
Yes.
before the day after Christmas, usually.
I read all the time over the Christmas season because it helps diffuse the tension from other things that are going on at the Christmas
So
season.
also a good excuse to escape, isn't it? To
Yes.
escape like the
Yeah.
With a hot beverage and an Afghan and a gentle snow falling outside.
Oh.
I'm not picky.
Well, and you've written Christmas books.
I have.
So,
Thank you, Margaret.
so the what is it like to write stories that are set within the Christmas season that you were probably writing in quite a different season to Christmas? Because the books are planned to come out later in the year, but you're probably not writing them right during
It's not
Christmas
that
time.
hard. I think Christmas all year round.
There you
I'm
go.
a Christmas nut,
Yeah.
but I really like writing Christmas stories because, again, I don't want to get all spiritual on you or touchy-feely, but I like writing Christmas stories because every emotion is magnified at Christmas. If you're lonely and sad, it goes off the charts. If you're happy in a new relationship, it goes off the charts. If you're happy in an old relationship, you're grateful for it. Churches have blue Christmas services. Nobody has blue Easter services or
No.
blue Labor Day services or blue Halloween services. Everything is magnified, and you feel the loss of a loved one or even a loved one that's alive but they're deployed or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
it's so
everything is
evocative, yeah.
sharper, and it's a good period to write about because it really taps into people's emotions.
And also, it's a more compact season. So if you're
Yeah.
writing a Christmas story, your plot encompasses a very specific, more
Period of
limited
time.
period
Yeah,
of time.
Margaret, my two Christmas books, they start before Thanksgiving, and I have to have everything wrapped up, the final embrace on Christmas Eve. So it's boom, boom, boom. It's fun, but it's very compacted.
Do you have Christmas scenes in your books?
So I was
trying
just
to
thinking,
remember.
so the only one really that touches on Christmas is my first book, What Milo Saw. And it's connected to the plot. So right at the beginning, the little boy Milo's goal is to make sure that his great-grandmother comes home for Christmas out of the horrible nursing home where she is. And so that very much drives the plot that he wants a home for Christmas, which is really important for him. And so you follow him with anticipation towards that goal. And also the last scene in the book is a Christmas scene. So it's interesting how I used that as a sort of driver for the narrative and for the plot and for the desire of the character. And I suppose Christmas, as you said, it heightens emotions, and it's also a shortcut to our readers' emotions too, because I think everyone has feelings about Christmas, that there's a really strong sense of what the atmosphere is like and what your childhood memories were like, and it's very vivid for most of us. It's
You
a great,
love it, you hate it.
yeah,
You
it
can't live
engages.
without
It's a
it.
shortcut to engaging readers very quickly, I think. Yeah.
In my backlist books, definitely, I thought of several that had some kind of Christmas scenes set in the late 18th century, early 19th century, which is fun because you get to study and research the origins of some of our traditions that we still
Very
have.
true.
And not a certain number of my books have fallen over the Christmas season, but some of my books encompass significant portions of a year. So it's a little, I don't try to avoid Christmas in that sense. If a book starts in the spring, might carry it through Christmas and beyond if it takes a longer time. And then some of my books have covered 20 years or something like that. And then you're like, okay, I don't want to have to put too many Christmas scenes in this book. Let's
totally.
skip over.
Yes.
And I guess a bigger question that writing contemporary fiction and wanting to reflect the world in which we live now, I sometimes feel a bit more cautious about writing specifically about Christmas because it's not always very inclusive in the way that many of us say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, which struck me when I moved to America. And trying to be aware that, for our readers, Christmas might not be resonant on a spiritual level, and it's, that kind of is something that I think about a lot as well, about including, I was thinking about that in my latest novel, which is set slightly in the future actually, about, the role of religion then and what faiths people belong to and how they all perceive Christmas. And yeah, anyway, I just think that's an interesting other dimension.
And in your memoir, did you cover?
It was the
some
easiest part to write about. It was because Concord was a veritable magic place, and Christmas didn't start in September. The day after Thanksgiving, suddenly downtown all the windows had been done, the lights were up on the poles, and everything was there, but it wasn't weeks and weeks of it. It was just all of a sudden that Friday, you could go downtown, and it was just magical. The lights came on.
Was it more magical than now, do you think?
Far more magical.
In what sense?
Well, there were so many businesses downtown then, so you had a lot more. You had Newberry's and Woolworths and Kresge's and Grant's, Penny's, Sears, and many of them had Santa Clauses, and inside they decorated beautifully for Santa's land and things like that. And so, much more so, yes. And they had lights at Pleasant Street draped across, because the poles were differently configured than now. But yes, it was. I mean, it was just, and the nativity, they were life-size figures then. Do you remember? They were not in a cage like they are now, but it was a
Paul, that was because of me. I tried to steal the baby Jesus.
Did you? You're the one.
When I was 2 years old, my parents took me down to see the nativity, and I tried to steal the baby Jesus.
You might not want to admit that.
No, I don't know. What's the statute of limitations?
I love that.
Well,
it was my favorite time.
Well,
it was magical.
We're about out of time, and so this is the question. Maybe we'll revisit this a year from now. But that was the imagine you're producing a Hallmark type Christmas movie with a Concord setting, and what kind of plot would you be, and what settings would you have? And I'm thinking now that we can definitely include Kathleen's story about stealing the baby Jesus and our
definitely.
It's yours.
and
it's
our
yours.
Concord Hallmark type Christmas movie. But so we'll think about that for a good 12 months and come back and pitch it. Maybe someone will pick it up. I think we need Hollywood to come to town.
I do too. Absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation,
wonderful.
and now we're all ready for the holidays, and we can make up our Christmas lists as writers and tell people what we want and think about things to give other readers that might enjoy some books. So
it's been delightful.
It's been great.
And to all of you out there that watch us, thank you very much, and the happiest of holidays to you. Special thank you to Concord TV and Matt for his invaluable time and assistance and expertise. And we will see you next year.
Next year.
Wow.
Happy holidays.